Well, it's always sad to see the last rose of the season fading away, but with some proper care right now, we can ensure that we'll have even more roses for next summer. Right now, I am training one of our climbing roses onto the trellis. Now I'm getting ready to get our roses ready to go through the winter, and this is part of that process. For climbing roses in this area, it's fairly simple to get them ready for the winter. Because we're not so far north, we don't have to put them in the trench, but it is important to make sure that they are well tied down to the trellis. Make sure that the trellis is sturdy, and make sure that they're tied down, which is what I've done here. And this is to keep them from whipping around in the wind, which we will have in Oklahoma over the winter. Well, if you come on around to the front, I'll show you a little bit more that we're going to do with this climbing rose. You'll notice we have some of these that are flopping out in front. Well, we're probably not going to tie these back to the trellis. We're probably going to go ahead and cut these off, but we're not going to do that right now because you don't want to prune roses right now, because that can sometimes send them into a growth spurt, and you'll get some young, lush growth that can easily be damaged by the winter cold. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tie these down to keep them from whipping around in the wind. Now you'll also notice that we've left all of the flowers on. We stopped deadheading mid to late September, and that signals the rose to kind of go into a dormant state. And so even though these don't look nice, that's a good thing for the rose because it sends it into that dormant state. Well, right here we've got our hybrid tea rose, and in order to get it ready for the winter, we've got to address an important issue. If you'll notice down here, you can see how the wind has rocked this rose back and forth. And so what we're going to do with it is, as soon as all the foliage falls off from the freeze, we're going to come in and we will prune this to 2.5 feet tall. And this, you have to wait until the rose goes dormant, but that will get rid of some of this wind resistance that is causing this rose to rock back and forth. The other thing that we're going to do is mulch around the base of this, and our mulch level will be about this tall, about 6 inches. And what we're doing is we're covering up that bud union right there so that it won't freeze off, because roses are budded onto a rootstock, and what we want is the top, so we don't want that top to freeze off. So that's all we have to do with that to prepare it for the winter. Now over here, our miniature roses are still putting on quite a show. We've got some beautiful yellow roses and also some red ones. Well, we're not going to mulch these right now, but we have quit deadheading them to send them into a dormant state. Now, after they've defoliated, we will come in and put a 6-inch layer around the crown down here at the bottom of pine straw mulch or of shredded oak leaves. We do have a rose over here that is going to require a little more attention going into the winter, and that's our standard rose. Now, if you recall, a standard rose is one that's trained up on a stem, and then it has been budded at the top as well as the bottom to have this nice effect here. Now, the first thing that needs attention is we need to cut the suckers off of this. That's some of these sprouts that have come up from the root here at the base. And this is the only thing that you actually do prune off no matter what time of year it is, because we don't want this rose coming up from the roots. So we'll take those off. Got one more over here. Got caught. And next, we want to stabilize this, again, to keep it from rocking in the wind. So I've pounded a stake in just to the base of where the branches come out here at the top. And I'm going to tie this rose to the stake. And I'm going to use a method known as a figure-8 method. And what this does is it keeps the rose stable and tied to the stake. But you'll notice the figure-8 in the middle provides a buffer between the rose stem and the stake so that it doesn't rub. And that's very important because you don't want to rub off the cambium of the rose. I'm going to tie this one at the bottom, and then I've got another one here that I'll tie at the top. To make sure that this isn't going to rock in the wind. Now, again, as soon as this goes dormant, we'll come back and we'll put a 6-inch layer of mulch around the base. And then what we're going to do for the top of this rose, because there is another bud union up here, we're going to take our pine straw mulch and we'll pack it around the top of the rose, and we'll fill all this in a ball. And then we'll take some burlap and just tie all that in and tie that around the base of the rose. And that will provide adequate winter protection for that, so we don't freeze off the top of our standard rose. Well, if you just take time and do a little bit of this care right now, you'll have a great crop of roses next spring.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.